Cheryl Crow, you are a liar. You said the first cut is the deepest, but man, a lot of these at the wire today hurt, cut to the bone, as the Denver Broncos have made cuts to get down to the 53-man roster that they need moving into the regular season against the Seattle Seahawks. In this video, we're going to break down what are the most surprising cuts, what it means for this roster, who are some of the players we might be targeting, knowing that across the NFL today, 1,100 dudes who had jobs yesterday walked out of the locker room with nothing but a trash bag and a couple old pairs of cleats. So there is a lot of talent out there. And one of the biggest advantages that this Denver Broncos team has going for it is that we have David Shaw, a completely made-up position with head coach material whose job it is to scour the entire NFL and find little nuggets out there and people who you can plug into Sean Payton's system and have them succeed. We're going to break it all down and a lot more in this video. If you're new to the channel, I'm Ben. I'm a diehard Denver Broncos fan. It helps me and the algorithm out a lot if you would click that like and subscribe button, and let's dive in. So obviously nothing is hurting quite as bad as it was to know that yesterday we lost Samaje Perine and Tim Patrick, both of whom the Denver Broncos tried to get out in front of that, knowing that they're players who will be playing somewhere else in the NFL. Multiple teams inquired about trading for them, but at the end of the day, they could not get a deal done in time. And so both of those guys were just straight up cut and will be able to go through the waiver process and will end up on other teams. We'll definitely cover where they end up here, but let's dive into a couple of the other big takeaways from cut down season for the Denver Broncos. So I think the first thing is that we had three unrestricted free agents make this team, which could be a sign that like, oh, we don't have a ton of talent. But the thing with the Denver Broncos that really distinguishes us from other teams across the NFL is we have just a rich history of undrafted free agents making Pro Bowls, helping us win Super Bowls. You go Rod Smith, Chris Harris Jr., C.J. Anderson, Shaq Barrett, Wesley Woodyard, Tom Nalen, like the list goes on and on, Philip Lindsay. Like there are a ton of players who other teams didn't find and didn't scour. And we know that Sean Payton likes to pick pieces up off the scrap pile. He brags all the time about how he was able to find Taysom Hill at 1 a.m. after the first waivers went through back in like the 2015 or something like that. And so I just trust if Sean Payton has a guy on this team, it's for a reason, and we're going to go through it. So a couple of them. The first one is that Blake Watson made this team as an unrestricted free agent. We know the running back out of Memphis, an amazing ability to catch the ball. And you almost saw him hidden a little bit in the preseason from all the reports at camp, what he was doing at open training camp and people on the Hill filming. You didn't see that exact level of production in preseason games, and you almost wonder if that is because Sean Payton kind of didn't know how this entire 53 was going to shake out and maybe had hopes of trying to sneak him onto the practice squad. There's just no way that you could have snuck a player like that onto the practice squad. Looking at a couple other big people who made this roster, and I'm pumped about, I think our biggest positional improvement that we made from last offseason to this offseason is our defensive line. And one of the dudes who completely showed out in the preseason, where he was not only did he have 2 sacks in that last game against the Cardinals, but he just felt like he was a disruptor on that defensive line. And so now when you're talking Zach Allen, DJ Jones, Malcolm Roach, and now having Jordan Jackson, very, very smart player. He went to the Air Force Academy, which like we saw with David Shaw and Stanford, like even get into the Air Force Academy, you need great grades, great test scores. You need a letter of recommendation from a congressperson. And so to have an Air Force grad on our roster is awesome. And we saw that he just looked big, he looked explosive, and he looked fast. And so that is one of the things as the Denver Broncos are gearing up to beat the Chargers twice this year, knowing that they're going to be in a run-heavy Harbaugh offense, knowing that we have a defensive line that can stand the test and can stop the run, which they did against the Colts, even with the Colts starting offensive line and the greatest running back in football. I put in quotes there with Jonathan Taylor. I'm very pumped about this defensive line. The big thing is obviously losing Tim Patrick. We're seeing another one of Courtland Sutton's boys get moved out. Remember, all the rumors around the offseason was that like Courtland Sutton, all of his friends were getting shipped out, and he was tweeting memes of Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, that last scene when Will Smith walks into an empty room. And now it's really like his last friend is off this team. So he lost Judy, he lost Russell Wilson, he lost Justin Simmons, and now the guy he just posted on Instagram since day one And we did indeed lose Tim Patrick, but we have some good news on that front as to the future of this Broncos team. Jalen Virgil, another surprise cut to me. I thought Jalen Virgil, I think I accidentally called him Virgil Green the other day, but Jalen Virgil's ability to be a returner, in addition to what we've seen of him as a receiver, I just think he is insanely talented. And so I guess the hope would be somehow he makes it through to the practice squad. And looking across the NFL, you saw a bunch of wide receivers get cut today who you weren't expecting, including one out of Kansas City. I saw KJ Hamler got cut. And so I hope Jalen Virgil makes it through. And when you have guys who are proven like a Tim Patrick, I think we will be able to get Jalen Virgil through on our practice squad, but we will definitely keep all of that information up to date. One of the more surprising cuts to me was the cut. One of the players I was most stoked to get was to have our UFL star, Dondrea Tillman, who is basically the MVP of a championship winning arena league, not arena league, but, you know, an alternative to the NFL. And just felt like he was a difference in the pass rush. But I think if you look at that room, we really have 4 insanely talented guys, and you're just going to have a hard time finding snaps for all of them, knowing that you're only going to have 2 of them down there, 2 of them out there at a time, with Cooper Browning, Benito, and Jonah Ellis really coming on. And then the hope is that we have Drew Sanders back by Halloween or so. And so at that point, you're talking 5 guys competing for only 2 of them on the field during base downs. And then I think in obvious pass situations, we've heard Vance Joseph talk about a NASCAR package where you might have 3 out there, but it is a very crowded room. So obviously Dondrea Tillman getting cut, he had multiple suitors looking at him right after that championship was over. So I expect him to end up making a team somewhere. And again, as Mike Kliss reports here, we are only carrying 4. So we did cut Incoom and also Durrell and Chami as well. He made it through to injured reserve, which we're going to talk about here in a second. The biggest surprise to me, other than Samaje and other than Tim Patrick, was waiving our inside linebacker, Jonas Griffith. He was the first move we made all offseason. This was all the way back right after the Super Bowl in February. We've talked about him a ton. He was a homeschooled kid who didn't even start playing football until high school. Incredibly smart, and we basically stole him and plucked him off of the 49ers practice squad several years ago. And John Lynch was salty about it, and they had hoped to get him through to practice squad. He actually was pegged to be the starter and then was injured, and so they swapped in Singleton and found that they had a real gem in Alex Singleton. But I was really expecting him to be the starting inside linebacker. I think the good news here is he looked totally healthy. You follow him on Instagram, like he looked like a beast. I'm sure the mental hurdles are still there. He's very much in the same boat as Tim Patrick, that he's battling back after a multi-year injury. But I think this really shows that Sean Payton and Vance Joseph are feeling very good about Cody Barton and feeling very good about Justin Strnad and don't have concerns at that inside linebacker position. There also were several inside linebackers, including one from the Rams that was on the trade block who the Broncos could have gone out and pursued. I think the Rams traded their inside linebacker for like a 6th-round draft pick to the Tennessee Titans. And so this, to me, is a silver lining because, man, if Jonas Griffith doesn't make this team, that means Sean Payton and Vance Joseph feel really good about the guys that we have here. Looking at the offensive line, I think what we're seeing is that the loss of Quinn Bailey was a really big loss. He was a backup offensive lineman who basically could play 3 positions, and you could slot him in. Whoever got hurt, he was next man up. We know this offseason we went out and got Mustapher and Throckmorton and all those very Norwegian-sounding names, and we did indeed waive Calvin Throckmorton, who did start for the Denver Broncos against the Green Bay Packers, knowing after Ben Powers got injured on the tackle attempt after the Samaje Perine forced interception. Other big news that we called on the channel here, and a lot of y'all called it in the comments as well, is that we did indeed waive our fullback, Michael Burton, and so we are going to be having Adkins play tight end and fullback, and that was something, after looking at that preseason game, like he's just as good of a blocker as Burton, but also can play tight end, and I think that's a really good thing for the Denver Broncos to save that spot and to have a guy who has versatility, knowing that Dulcich is not completely healthy and Lucas Kroll has not shown the ability to block like we had hoped he would. A little surprised here about the cutting of Lil Jordan Humphrey, just because I thought with Tim Patrick not being on the squad that maybe Jordan Humphrey would make it through. He is one of Sean Payton's favorite dudes all the way back to the Saints. And he showed production last year with Russell Wilson, showed production in the preseason. And really, to me, this is just showing Sean Payton has a lot of belief in Vele, a lot of belief in Mims. We did not see Mims a lot during this preseason, and I was worried about it. But to me, this is Sean Payton doubling down on the dudes that he has, and so we can take solace in that. And again, we did not trade Tim Patrick or Samaje Perine, so we will be covering exactly where they end up here. And that is essentially all the cuts there. What stood out to you? What was the biggest shocker? What are you most excited about moving into the new year? We are now on to the Seattle Seahawks. We have got a ton to Bo-Lieve in. It's easy to feel discouraged by some of the guys we cut, but I think the silver lining is that Sean Payton has his squad, and the words he's used to describe this team time and time again, young and hungry. Do not overlook a young and hungry team, and we have cut so much age from this team, and we have guys who want this so bad, and we're going to be there for it. We got a ton to Bo-Lieve in. Don't know where my basketball is. Oh my goodness, how did I sink that?